Hello, my name is Dan Gordon, and I chose I, Robot by Isaac Asimov as my book for the semester. Quick overview: it's a collection of short stories written between 1939 and 1950. Features a central character named Dr. Susan Calvin, who's a robopsychologist for U.S. Robots and Mechanical Men, a company who manufactures robots. The stories are written as a series of interviews with Dr. Calvin, where she talks about her past experiences with robots. Stories deal with the evolution of robotic technology over the course of time, and the stories deal with primarily how the robots work within the confines of what are established as the three laws of robotics. Asimov's three laws of robotics are, in order of importance, the first law is a robot may not injure a human being or through an action allow a human being to come to harm. The second law is that a robot must obey orders given to it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. And the third law is that a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. These laws can be slightly altered. They always have pretty far-reaching and unforeseen consequences. Quick summary of all the stories. Robbie deals with a robot nanny that is separated from the child that it cares for. Reason being the mother doesn't like the relationship the child and the robot have. Father creates this whole production where they go to the robot facility that Robbie's working at after he was discharged from the family services. Robbie saves the child's life. Family is reunited with the robot. Mother accepts it. Everything's happily ever after. Robbie is a very archaic robot, and he's unable to speak. Second story, Runaround, has recurring characters Mike Donovan and Gregory Powell, who I've dubbed the two bumbling geniuses. They're brilliant, but they always get themselves in very bizarre circumstances. In this story, the robot has an enhanced third law for self-preservation, so it gets stuck in this loop where it's told by humans to do something that endangers itself, and because of the strengthened third law, it becomes drunk, is how the characters actually describe the robot's behavior, and it gets stuck in this limbo state as it cannot either disobey the human's orders, but it also can't endanger itself. So it actually starts running away from Donovan and Powell, and the loop the robot's stuck in is finally broken when Powell risks his own life and the robot's forced to save him because of the first law. Reason again features Powell and Donovan. It deals with cult-like behaviors in robots, where one robot is the master and all the other robots follow it. Powell and Donovan have a very important job of protecting humanity. They basically control these beams, and they have to be very accurate with them, or large portions of humanity can be destroyed. And the robots don't let Donovan and Powell do their job, and they keep saying, these bizarre cult-like behaviors in terms of worshiping and the master, and the master does this, the master says that, and they don't let Donovan and Powell do their job, and Donovan and Powell, regardless of the importance of their job, just give up because the robots overpower them, and then what ends up happening is the robots get the job done. They do what Powell and Donovan were doing, except better, and protect humanity, and don't violate the first law. Powell and Donovan just kind of accept it. Catch That Rabbit, again deal with Powell and Donovan. They have to figure out why a robot with 6 underling robots stops doing its job correctly only while it is not being observed. So what ends up happening is that when the robot is being observed, it lessens the burden, but when it's not being observed, it becomes overloaded by having to give orders to 6 subordinates. And the way the problem is finally resolved is when Powell and Donovan destroy one of the 6 underling robots, which allow the central robot to function normally as the 5 underlings don't overload it. Wire deals with a robot that is accidentally created that can read minds. Situation this robot's in is that it can't violate the first law, so anything that it says to a person that will upset them, it can't say. Therefore, it always tells people exactly what they want to hear. It ends up being destroyed by Susan Calvin presenting a logical paradox, where it's put in a situation where people want to know the answer to something, but the answer will hurt them, but also not telling them will hurt them, so the robot kind of just blows up. Little Lost Robot deals with a group of robots that were constructed with a modified first law because human beings were traversing this radioactive area, and then the robots kept rescuing them because they didn't want the humans to endanger themselves. So they modified this first law to allow the humans to traverse the radioactive areas. A robot is one of the people working gets frustrated with the robot and tells it to get lost, and the robot literally follows the directions and hides among similar-looking robots till it can't be found. The robot actually develops a superiority complex, and won't give in to any more commands, won't listen, and is just trying to prove its superiority. And this is a result of the modification of the first law. This own superiority complex ends up being its downfall, as it's finally tricked into giving itself up by Dr. Calvin. Escape deals with a computer that is tasked to create a faster-than-light engine. The reason it can't do it is because it involves temporary human death. But Dr. Calvin feeds the computer some information which helps it come to terms with the fact that the death is temporary and it's not actually hurting people. And the robot almost develops a sense, not almost, it does develop, the computer rather, develops a sense of humor about it and does some kind of quirky things throughout to help it deal with this complex issue of is temporary human death actually hurting people, and it ends up building this engine, and Hal and Donovan involuntarily volunteer as the first participants of this, as they basically just go on a ship and the computer just sends them out with this faster than light engine, and they temporarily die and they come back and everything's fine. Evidence deals with this man slash possible man, Stephen Byerly, who's running for mayor. And his opponent is trying to run a campaign to prove that he's not a man, but a humanoid robot. All the suspicions of this end because he punches a man, which proves he's not a robot because he's violating the first law. However, Dr. Calvin proposes the idea that the person that he punched wasn't really a man, but was a robot created just so it could be punched. Brings up the concept, too, that a robot and a good person are indistinguishable from one another. That is Stephen Byerly a good person, or is he a robot? Who really cares? He's doing his job well and serving mankind. The final story is the inevitable conflict. And basically what happens in this is it's due to an error by the machines. The world economy has taken a slight fall. No one can figure out why, because they assume the machines wouldn't make a mistake. They find out all the data fed to it is correct. And what they end up finding out is the machines intentionally hurt humanity in the short term to benefit them in the long run. And the realization is that humanity is no longer under its own control, and the machines know that they need to be in control to benefit humanity moving forward, and that their self-preservation, the machine self-preservation, is utterly important to the development of humanity and human beings and the success of humanity. And it raises the questions of whether or not human beings are better left on their own or better left to forces without their control that can protect them. Two themes that occurred and that showed in every story: fear. I mean, robots are not even allowed on Earth. People fear that the robots will replace the human workforce, and also fear that the robots would violate the three laws. And another theme is the limits of computation. It's basically how would robots react to certain stimulus, and also what the three laws of robotics allow for certain activities. I was originally going to do the technology part, is what did Asimov get right, what did he get wrong, but it didn't really work that way, because while there are technologies that were assumed at the time that either do or do not exist, I feel like it was better to discuss technology primarily as a parallel to modern computing. Just a quick background: robotics. The term was created by Asimov in Liar in 1941. It dealt with construction and the science of robots. The positronic brain is in every robot. Positron is a type of antimatter. It was discovered in 1932, although it was predicted before then. Basically what it is, it's a positively charged electron. How the positronic brain works is never described, though an antiparticle by definition is very unstable. So it'd be hard to see how something like this could actually exist in the future. Although the instability does create huge amounts of energy, which could be utilized. And again, while the positronic brain doesn't seem to me that's something that could ever happen, the vagueness of how it works leaves it as a possibility. I feel like the positronic brain is reflective of the atomic period, which is, central throughout all iRobot, the mid-1940s and 1950s, where the splitting of atoms and nuclear bombs and everything were on the forefront of both society and science. And the positronic brain is definitely comes out of that. The evolution of robotics parallels that of computing, just in the utter speed at which things improve. Robbie was the most basic and archaic robot, was very clunky, and like I said before, he was unable to speak. the course of less than 100 years, our robots have advanced so much that not only were they speaking and controlling and creating vehicles that move faster than the speed of light, they were actually able to help advance humanity. So just how quickly, and I mean, with computers, they say, or may not know, they say that every 6 months computers double in speed and half in cost. So I feel like the exponential expansion of computers is paralleled by Asimov's robots. A couple of examples of technology in the stories. In Runaround, one of the robots is stuck in a loop, which is very common in program. And just like in coding, how it occurs is when a parameter to exit a task, what the exit parameters isn't clearly defined. It just keeps repeating the class over and over and over again. The robot's positronic brain can only do one thing at a time. The way a Turing machine works, which is basically every computer out is based, not basically, every computer out is based on a Turing machine. Turing machine basically is a tape where it just does one task at once and either goes forward or backwards. But the whole point is that it can only do one thing at a time, which is why the robot's positronic brain got stuck in the loop and Runaround, as it was unable to do more than one thing at once. Catch That Rabbit draws a parallel with quantum particles, which behave differently once they're observed. In fact, one of the quantum mechanics is a very new field relative to other physics and science fields, and why this happens isn't exactly understood. Another parallel to computing is how system overloads, which what happens in Catch That Rabbit is it's being overloaded because there's 6 robots under the one robot. And a common problem in programming is dealing with functions and overloading functions, and different languages have different ways to deal with it, but there's definitely a parallel between both quantum mechanics and computer program that shows in Catch That Rabbit. In Escape, a hyperspatial driver, a faster-than-light engine is created. Einstein, his theory of relativity did not allow for this in a typical sense. There are some possibilities that faster-than-light travel is possible. If an object is already traveling faster than light, it will continue to travel faster than light. Kind of makes sense, something that Einstein didn't really discuss, so it wasn't discussed until after him. But what Einstein did discuss, and that relatively did allow for, was that the warping of space-time could allow matter to get from one point to another in less time than it would take for light to traverse the same distance, most commonly called the wormhole. Different though it seemed as though in Escape there was an actual traversing of distance, which is a little bit differently than how Einstein would imagine something to move faster than the speed of light. One thing that I found kind of unrealistic technology-wise in Escape was the temporary death of the 2 characters, because anything traveling faster than the speed of light wouldn't feel the passage of time, and that again is straight from Einstein's theories. So temporary death wouldn't mean anything because there would be no time that passed for anything to happen to humans. In fact, they shouldn't have even felt any time elapse at all. Story Liar dealt with the most outrageous technology that Asimov talks about, the ability to read minds, something I just can't believe. I can't ever picture technology like that existing. Although brain activity is electric, it's just electrical impulses. So I guess there's some science that could say this is maybe one day a possibility. I really don't think so, though. And I think the whole logical paradise to destroy the machine, is very similar. They call it the liar's paradox. The most common being the sentence is a lie, causing a robot's brain to explode. Prominently featured in that Star Trek episode I found that was called I'm Mud. But I felt like that was a literary device, and I don't know how much play that would have in real math or philosophy or science, as truth values don't, as that's a statement. For instance, the sentence is a lie is a statement that may or may not have a truth value. There's different ways to look at it. I don't think it would create complete destruction in a machine. Evidence. The story is an example of the Turing test. The Turing test is addressing the issue of whether or not a machine can be built that is indistinguishable from a person. The test was created by Alan Turing, who's one of the absolute founding fathers of computer science. It was invented in 1950, who believed it would be passed by a robot in 50 years. Did a little bit of reading on whether or not it actually was passed. There was a robot that fooled 33% of observers, so I can't quite say that it passed, but robots are definitely becoming, when machines in modern society out of robots, computers are definitely capable of feigning conversation. I don't think a machine could have a conversation that would be completely indistinguishable from conversation between 2 people. at this point. I think for a short period of time it could, but over a long, long set of data, and not even that long, just 5-10 minutes or so, you would realize that some of the responses are feigned, they're not genuine. But again, I'm not certain of that. And in the story Evidence, Stephen Byerly's existence as a person is never confirmed one way or another. So that would imply that Asimov says, yes, the Turing test can absolutely be passed. Turing's test only was verbal, or not even verbal. It was the reading of the transcript of conversations between robots and people, basically saying which one was which. As the technology for a robot with a human appearance wasn't considered by him. I guess it wasn't even considered a possibility by Alan Turing when he developed the Turing test and discussed it. That's pretty much it. These are my additional sources that I used for this presentation, and thank you for listening.